Hi there, my name is Marley and welcome to my channel or welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a booktube classic and talk about all of the books that I read in the last month, aka my July wrap up. So I had another really great reading month this month. I actually completed 11 books and participated in a couple different readathons. However, I have vlogged my reading experience with every single book that I read this month. So this might be a little bit repetitive if you've watched all of my other vlogs, which I'll make sure to link below. But I'm just gonna film this anyway, even if it feels a little bit repetitive. Maybe you didn't watch those videos and you can just watch this to hear what I think and how I rated them. And it's just kind of like a nice compilation of all the books I read put together, ranked from worst to best, how I always do them in this video. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get into it with my lowest rated book of the month, which was Better Together by Riccio, and I read this for the Tarot Readathon. And I ended up giving this one 3 stars, and I'll just say I think it was sort of a generous rating on my part. If you have not heard of this book, this follows 2 sisters. One is named Jamie, and you can see her on this side of the cover, and the other one is Siri, and she is on this side of the cover. So a really cute cover design and concept. Unfortunately, it didn't really live up to that in terms of the content in the book. So this book is sort of a Parent Trap and Freaky Friday retelling. These 2 sisters were separated when they were young, when their parents split up and moved across the country. One is in New York and one is in California, and so they grew up without their sister and without their other parent. When they bump into each other at a special retreat, they end up reconnecting and deciding that they want to kind of switch lives with each other and sort of confront their parent that abandoned them. So it's a fun concept, and I definitely can't knock this book for being boring or anything like that. It definitely was fun, and I did appreciate the sisterly bonding that goes on in this book. Those are some of the best parts, and also both of the love interests for both of these girls are really cute as well. There is some pretty good representation. Siri is bisexual, just as an example. However, if you guys don't know, Riccio is actually a booktuber on here, and I just feel like you can feel a little bit of a disconnect between your typical author who maybe is more classically trained. I don't know, can you be classically trained to write? You get what I mean, that had more writing training, and maybe someone who's still in the beginning of their writing journey. It just wasn't quite hitting that quality that you want from a book. I also feel like it was longer than it needed to be. I think the intro was too long and the outro was too long. The rising and falling action both could have been cut shorter. A lot of the humor or aspects of this book are a little bit cringy. I've been explaining them, and yeah, I hope to see more of Christine's growth in the rest of her books. I'm still a supporter of her channel, so I want to keep buying them and reading them and seeing what I think, but it just doesn't quite live up to the other books that are being published in the world, Then we have Pumpkin by Julie Murphy, which I also gave 3 stars to. This is a companion novel with the previous books Dumplin' and Pudding. All of these books sort of have to do with characters that are plus size and giving that good plus size representation. This one also follows our main character Waylon, who is also queer, so we are seeing how he deals with being an outcast at his school, as he is a very unique individual. He is really into this drag show, kind of reminiscent of RuPaul's Drag Race. He films this sort of fun audition video for the show that ends up getting spread all around the school, and so he starts getting made fun of for that, and even gets nominated to be prom queen at his school as a joke. And then one of his other friends who's lesbian gets nominated as prom king in a way to humiliate them, but they end up embracing it and actually genuinely running. It's sort of an inspirational story. I unfortunately didn't love it as much as maybe a younger viewer, because I just felt like it was more for a younger teen audience, and maybe someone who needs this uplifting story in their life. I also found that in this book and the last book, a lot of the pop culture references were annoying to me and also a little bit outdated. So I feel like a lot of teens might feel the same way. If there's not a mention of TikTok, it's not relevant. But this one is cute. If you read the other books in the series, then it might be nice to just kind of conclude it and find out where all those characters end up, as you do see the same group of characters in each of the books. Another book I read was One to Watch by Kate Stayman-London, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. And I actually read this for the tarot readathon as well, and for my own personal book club with my friends. This one follows B, who is a plus-sized beauty blogger and influencer, and she watches this show that's called The Main Squeeze, which is basically like The Bachelorette. One day she gets really upset and goes on like a drunken tirade on her blog about how the show lacks diversity in terms of body size of the contestants and ethnicity and just general diversity, and it goes viral, and the producers end up reaching out to her to be the new Main Squeeze to kind of help her own career and get that publicity, but also for the show's publicity to kind of do some damage control to make them seem like they are open to more diverse contestants. So this show had a really fun idea, and I still stand by that. I do think the idea was really unique on the author's part. I liked how she added a lot of multimedia elements into it, like Twitter and blog posts and articles. It really helped you to understand what was going on in the audience's perspective. However, I do feel like some of that got to be a little cringy. This is a main theme for a lot of the books I read this month. This is another one where I just think the writing could have been stronger, the characters could have been a little bit more likable, and the message of accepting people despite their weight was just really shoved in your face, shoved down your throat. I feel like you can have books that have nice messages like that without it constantly being brought up. Like B, it was like her whole personality, the fact that she was plus size, and I know that that would be something on your mind, but I just feel like it could have been focused on a little less and we could have still got the message across. But yeah, One to Watch, 3.5. Then we have another 3.5 rating, and that was for Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I read this for a literary fiction blog that I just uploaded. I had really high hopes for this one, and unfortunately I think that clouded my experience for this one a little bit, and it was a bit of a letdown. But it follows these two women and their families and just sort of all the interactions they have with each other and the different drama that comes for it. At the beginning of the book, you see that the Richardson house, which is Elena's household, is on fire, and there were a bunch of little fires started everywhere, showing that it was started on purpose by someone. And then the rest of the book is just leading up to that incident and seeing how we got there and who set that fire and why. So Mia ends up living in one of their properties that they rent out with her daughter Pearl, and that is how the families get introduced and both of their children start interacting. There's a lot of different themes in this. One of them is motherhood, one of them is racism and classism, as they come from different classes. Obviously, it's kind of hard to describe this book, and that's why the description is so vague, but I also just found that like not a lot of stuff happened, or everything that happened was like not super dramatic. Like it was dramatic, but just not. Oh my god, I'm struggling so much to describe this, but I just feel like there could have been a more dramatic incident than what we got. But that might just be me because everyone's rating it so highly on Goodreads, but I'm like, I don't know, I just wish that it could have given me a little bit more. I'm a mess. Then we get into my 4-star reads, starting with The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware, which, reflecting on it, I'm kind of surprised I gave it 4 stars. I feel like maybe it could have been 3.5, but whatever, we'll trust past Marley. But I read this for Summerween, and this is obviously a thriller, and we are following this girl named Hal, and her mother died years ago, and she's just sort of been scraping by. She's in debt. She took over her mom's tarot card business, which, as you can imagine, is not super lucrative. So she's in trouble. The people that she borrowed money from are after her, and sort of with perfect timing, she gets this note that says that her her regular grandmother, Mrs. Westaway, has passed away and left something for her in her will, but Hal knows that her grandparents are already dead and she doesn't have another grandmother, so she thinks it's a mistake. But because she's desperate for cash, she goes to the family for the will reading, gets involved in all of that, and obviously there is tension as she is lying about being related to them, and she just sort of gets caught up in this whole situation. And it seems like there is some weird murdery stuff. There's some missing people. There's, I don't know, it's been a while since I read this, but Ruth Ware, I have to say, is just a really good writer in my opinion, and she really is good at building up a mystery and building up tension. So that's why I really enjoyed this, even though the twist was something that I saw coming, I think pretty much from the beginning, unfortunately. So Ruth Ware's twists are not always the best, but I think the reading experience is still always pretty good. So I still would recommend all of her books that I've read, including this one. Just don't expect something too mind-blowing with this, but I still thought it was good. Then we have another 4-star thriller, and that is Invisible Girl by Jewell. I think this cover is just so pretty. That's probably my favorite thing about this book. Also, I feel like the ice and rose are like not related to the story at all, but still respect for this cover. Jewell is another great thriller author that I absolutely love her writing, but similar to Ruth Ware, she creates this really great creepy atmosphere, but she doesn't really have those twists that you want in thrillers, and that's why this had to lose a star, as again, like, the twists weren't amazing and you could really just see them coming, I feel. But we are following this woman and her family. What is her name? Kate, and she has 2 teenage children, and then her husband's a psychologist. And they live across the street from Owen. I should hold this up. And he was a teacher, and then he got fired for sexual misconduct, as some students are accusing him of doing different things to them that were inappropriate. Then, when this girl goes missing, Sapphire, this other teenage girl, Owen becomes a suspect in her disappearance, but looks like it could be someone else. There's also a bit of like an incel community component, which I always bring up when I talk about this book, as Owen kind of dabbles in that community a little bit if you're interested in that. But this is essentially just like a missing girl thriller, men are evil, that kind of thing. But this was good. I would recommend this. Then we come to my most recent read, and that was Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. And as you can imagine, we're following Eleanor Oliphant, who is this 30-year-old woman with a typical office, like administrative job. And she has a very lonely life, very routine, not really many friends or family. And she has a lot of social awkwardness. You sort of go on a journey of finding out why she is like this and just what caused her to be this way. And when Raymond, this new guy at work, shows up, they end up saving this man's life together, this man that kind of collapsed on the street, and that sort of forces her to start interacting with more people, more nice people like Raymond, who help her start to learn how to interact with people on more of a normal basis and create some actual relationships with others. So it's a very like heartwarming story. There is a lot of like darkness in it, and I actually would put out some trigger warnings. I don't really want to say for what, but maybe like look it up if you think you might be triggered by things. But yeah, this was a really, really cute book. Eleanor can come off as a little bit annoying at first, just with how she acts and her little quirks, but she actually becomes such a lovable main character, and you just like can't help but really, really root for her. This is also very funny. It is a British book, so there's that British humor, which takes a little bit getting used to, but then it does become like really, really funny despite those dark elements as well. It'll have you crying one moment, laughing another. A really special book that I would highly recommend. Now we have One Last Stop by Casey Mcquiston. This was a highly anticipated book released for me, as this is the author of Red, White, and Royal Blue, as most people know. And this was 4 stars. It was super, super cute. Not perfect, but pretty dang good. We are following August, who is a 23-year-old girl living in New York City. I love reading about characters who are in their early 20s. I guess it's the new adult genre, because I just find it so relatable, as I'm 24, so yeah, I just really like reading books like that. But anyways, she's in New York, and she definitely is struggling a little bit like financially, or trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life. She moves in with some roommates, and then she starts seeing this girl Jane on the subway. Like every single day, they're always on the same car, and she starts to suspect that there is something going on with this girl. As the synopsis says, she ends up finding out that Jane was displaced from time. She was actually in the 70s, and something happened to make her stuck on this train and have some sort of connection with August. Because August is very into like solving mysteries, she takes on Jane's case to figure out why she's stuck on this train. And in the meantime, they, as you can imagine, fall in love. August also has this whole thing with her mom where her mom raised her to be like a little kid detective because her uncle went missing as well in the past, and her mom have been trying to find him. So that's like another storyline going on. But this was a really great like cast of characters. These two girls were really cute and I did like the relationship, even though I was a little bit insta-love. Like the romance was not my favorite part, if you know what I mean, but it was still cute. Her roommates were all really fun. I really came to enjoy all of them and their friendships with each other. It's really focused on the queer community if that's something that you like to read about and is important to you, as most of these characters, or I think all of them, are queer in some way. And it's really about that found family that a lot of queer people end up having when, you know, their real families don't accept them. So a really beautiful book. At some points I did feel like it dragged a little bit or meandered a little bit, but at the end of the day it was a really great story. Oh, I was actually a little bit disappointed in the ending as well though. I'll mention, if you know how it ended, I'll just say I kind of wanted it to be different. Like I wanted it to be sadder, but that's my own issue, I guess. I need to accept that things have happy endings, and that's nice. Then we have another very highly talked about book, and that is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Gave this one 4 stars. It was not as good as Daisy Jones or Evelyn Hugo as most people are saying, but it was still really, really good. My opinions are kind of just on par with what everyone else has been saying about this. If you don't know, it follows the children of Mick Riva, and he's a famous musician, and he has 4 kids who he sort of abandons. Like he's a really terrible guy, terrible dad, like classic typical rock star. So the 4 kids are raised by their mother. So we are seeing those flashbacks to the mom's life and then the kids' life growing up. But we are also in present day where the 4 kids are throwing this Riva party in Malibu. All the 4 kids have sort of found success for themselves as like models, surfers, photographers, that kind of thing. And then we just know from the beginning that something bad is going to happen at this party. It's going to end in like a fire and a disaster. And so we're kind of leading up to that and getting to know all of our characters as well. It's definitely a character-driven story, and it's really about like family drama and family relationships, as Paige from the PM Reader has mentioned, and I really like this comparison. It's very similar to the show Shameless, where it's about all these siblings that sort of have to take care of each other when their parents can't, and like the chaos surrounding that, but it will make you cry. Like it's not as funny as Shameless. It's more focused on like the trauma that you get from like your parents. So this is more of like a deep book that will like probably make you cry, and it did actually bring tears to my eyes as well. Very great book. Definitely read it. Then we just have my last 2 books of the month, and they were both 4.5 stars, so close to being perfect. So one of them is Beartown by Fredrick Backman. This is another pretty heavy book that will probably make you cry. It is about this small town called Beartown. They are known as a hockey town. Basically, that's like the main thing that brings the town together and brings like tourism and success for the town. It's been a while since they've really been successful, but there's this great hockey player that I forget his name right now, but he's really just like killing it, and they're really getting hope that they will win the championship game or whatever it is and sort of have a successful team again. But this player ends up committing a violent act on this young girl who is actually the general manager's daughter, the general manager of the hockey team's daughter. That creates a lot of drama in the town, as you know, so many members of the town don't want to accept that their star hockey player that they idolize and they hope for great success to have done something so violent, and they do not believe it. It has to do with rape culture and all of those themes that we see in real life, where athletes commit these crimes and no one wants to believe them, and they start seeing the guys as the victim instead of the girls. And it's just sort of a commentary on that, and you see the effects that a sexual assault can have on everyone in a community, like not just the girl and the guy, but also like the family of the girl and the friends, the family of the assaulter. It's done really, really well. Fredrick Backman is really good at writing, even though these are translated from Swedish, where he originally is from, but they're just like really beautiful stories. This and Anxious People, I really hope to read more of his books. I will say the first half of this book is hard to get through, especially if you don't like reading about hockey or men. There's just like, as you can imagine, because it's a male hockey team, there's just like so many male characters that sometimes it was annoying to me. The hockey too, I understand why they had to focus on it so much, because they wanted to get across how important hockey was to all these people, but I was like, let's just get to the main drama here. But definitely push through it if you're having trouble, because the second half is really worth it. And then the final book that I read this month, which was actually one of the first books I read, was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This is a thriller, like mystery book following this man who keeps waking up reliving the same day over and over again in different people's bodies. And he's trying to solve a murder. Like, it's so fun. Like, this is one where the concept sounds fun, but also it delivers on that. It's not just that the idea is great, but the actual story was done so well, and I feel like so much thought was put into it by Stuart. And basically everyone that he wakes up in is like a witness to the murder, and in each person he's going through their day, interacting with different people and trying to put the clues together. It's kind of reminiscent of like a Happy Death Day, Groundhog Day sort of situation, but it's done not exactly like those things. Like, there's some twists throughout. There's honestly a lot of twists throughout, and it went places that I did not picture it would go to. I will say though, the beginning was a little bit hard to get through, as there's a lot of stuff you need to keep in mind as you're trying to keep the timelines in mind and all the different characters, as it is kind of an old-timey vibe, which I always find books like that are like harder to understand. But there's a lot of stuff to remember. I would even recommend like keeping notes potentially of like who different people are, like the different witnesses, especially because a lot of them are men. Like, why is there so many men in all these books? A lot of them are men, and a lot of the characters like blend together. So maybe keep notes, but definitely push through even if you're put off by the beginning, because it's so worth it, I find. And it's probably my favorite book of the month because it just gave me the most like excitement and the most feelings, I guess. Well, as you saw, we had some emotionally impactful books, but I feel like those aren't always like the favorites because you just want them to be like more fun, which this one is. And it's a little bit magical, I'll just say, as well. But obviously with the whole like waking up again and reliving the same day, like, I guess you get that it's kind of like not based in reality. Anyways, I'm kind of tired of talking now. Hopefully you guys liked this wrap up. I'm glad that I'm really having a successful reading year. Not all of these books were hits this month, unfortunately, but I still read quite a bit, so I'm happy with that. Definitely leave me a comment if you have thoughts on any of these books, and give it a like as well, and subscribe for more videos. I do wrap ups every month, and I do reading vlogs and like sit down videos and all that kind of stuff. And until next time, I hope you have a great day. Bye.